elderly man stood at the edge of the flashing police lights, a quiet figure no one took seriously. "Hey, Grandpa, wrong neighborhood. Retirement homes across town," one officer joked, and a few others chuckled. Robert Wilson, 72, didn't flinch. He simply watched the SWAT team adjust their vests and check their weapons. Inside the second-floor apartment where he lived, a gunman held 3 hostages. "Sir, step back. Restricted area," a young officer ordered. "I live there," Robert said evenly, pointing to the window above. The officer smirked. "Sure you do." "And I'm Batman. Move it." Robert adjusted his worn cap and stepped aside. He'd felt this quiet dismissal before, judged by age, ignored by strangers who greeted other residents politely while eyeing him with doubt. Across the street, Captain Richards studied blueprints on a patrol car hood. 3 hours of failed negotiations had left tension hanging heavy in the air. "Team ready to enter in 60 seconds, a voice crackled over the radio. Robert's eyes traced the formation, the angles, the gaps in cover. He'd built part of this structure decades ago. He also remembered a month-old warning sign, a stranger slipping in at odd hours, a chemical smell from Unit 402, alerts that building security had brushed off. "This will go bad," he muttered. He moved. In one smooth step, he crossed the yellow tape before anyone could stop him. 2 officers grabbed his arms. "What do you think you're doing, old man?" one barked. "You'll all be in danger if you go in like that," Robert said calmly. Captain Richards strode over, irritation clear. "And you know that how?" "I worked on this building for 40 years. There's a hidden passage between 402 and 404 that's not on your plans. He set a trap." The captain scoffed. "Why should we believe you?" Robert's answer was only 5 words. "Delta Force Commander. Operation Tempest." Silence. Radio stilled. Richards froze, recognition flickering in his eyes. Robert continued quietly. "Sector 7. Access code 497. Alpha Charlie." In that instant, the room full of doubts collapsed. The man they'd mocked carried a past none of them had imagined, and the next move of the entire operation was about to change. "Check it." Captain Richards stepped back and barked an order into his radio. Seconds later, his face shifted, confusion giving way to respect. "Sir," he said, returning to Robert Wilson with a different tone, "I owe you an apology." Officers exchanged puzzled looks. Robert's expression never changed. "You have 20 minutes before he sets off the charges," Robert said evenly, "and they're not just chemicals. I've watched electronic parts go into that apartment for weeks." Richards motioned the team back and cleared space around Robert. A young officer stepped forward. "Lieutenant Maya Cruz," she introduced herself, "negotiation specialist. If you know this building, we need you." Robert nodded, sensing genuine respect. "Apartment 402 hides a flaw," he explained. "During construction, a gap formed between 402 and 404. Access is through the bathroom vent in 404. It's not on any official plans." Lieutenant Carter, the one who'd mocked him earlier, scoffed. "We're trusting an old man who claims he was some kind of soldier?" "Ridiculous," Richards replied quietly. "Command just confirmed it. He's one of the most decorated special operations leaders alive. Operation Tempest, 1982. Classified." Carter's jaw tightened. The revelation didn't calm him. It stung. The man he'd dismissed now commanded the room. "He might have been someone decades ago," Carter muttered. "Tactics change." Robert ignored the comment, focusing on Cruz and sketching an alternative plan. "He could be bluffing about the explosives," Carter pressed. "No," Robert said, his voice cutting through the noise. "Look closer." He zoomed in on a surveillance feed, highlighting a tiny device on the window ledge. "Motion sensor, wired to a trigger. The suspect has military training." Cruz studied the image. "He's right. How did we miss that?" As the team scrambled to adjust strategy, Robert eased onto a bench, his knee aching, a silent reminder of a grenade fragment long ago. To onlookers, just an old injury; to him, an unspoken medal. "Why keep your past a secret?" Cruz asked gently. Robert smiled faintly. Would anyone believe an elderly black man claiming he once commanded special forces? The radio crackled. The suspect wants to speak to Robert Wilson. Only him. All eyes turned. Do you know him? Richards asked. Simon Mercer, Robert answered calmly. Former military. We served together. You knew he'd ask for you, Cruz observed. Robert didn't reply. For weeks he'd tracked Mercer's quiet signals, unnoticed by everyone else. Let me talk to him, Robert said, rising with quiet resolve. Protocol demanded he stay behind the barricade. He shook his head. Your rules won't work with Mercer, he said, unclipping his earpiece. I trained him. The command post went silent. You were his instructor, Cruz breathed. Robert gave a single nod. Operation Blackhawk, 1987. Infiltration and extraction. He learned everything from me. Check it. Captain Richard stepped back and radioed a code. Seconds later, his face changed completely. Sir, he said, voice steady now, my apologies. The other officers looked at each other, bewildered. Robert Wilson stayed calm. You have 15 minutes before he triggers the explosives, he said, and they're not just chemicals. I've seen the electronics going in for weeks. Richards ordered the team to clear a space around Robert. Lieutenant Maya Cruz stepped forward. Negotiation specialist, she introduced herself. If you know this building, we need you. Robert explained the hidden passage between apartments 402 and 404, an error in the original blueprints. Access came through the bathroom vent of 404, invisible on standard plans. Lieutenant Carter, still skeptical, scoffed. We're trusting a man with unverified stories of secret missions? Ridiculous. We've already confirmed his identity, Richards cut in. If he says he knows Mercer, I believe him. Robert checked the weapon Richards had personally retrieved from the armory. I have 15 minutes, he said. If I'm not out with the hostages by then, do what you must. He walked toward the entrance with the quiet assurance of someone who had faced far worse. He's walking to his death, Carter muttered. No, Cruz replied. He's speaking a language only the suspect understands. Inside, Robert climbed to the 4th floor, voice steady. Simon, it's Wilson. A rough voice answered from behind the door. Commander? Prove it's you. Robert smiled faintly. Eagle 7 November Alpha. Locks clicked. The door opened to reveal Simon Mercer, gray-haired, eyes feverish, hand shaking. They said you were dead, Simon whispered, instinctively saluting. Almost, Robert said quietly. 3 hostages sat bound but unharmed. Robert's eyes took in the room in a single sweep. 2 window charges, 1 backdoor charge, motion sensors everywhere. Why, Simon? They abandoned us after Beirut, Simon said bitterly. No records, no treatment. I faked my death, but the voices never stopped. Robert nodded, recognizing the torment of untreated trauma. I saw the signs weeks ago, he said softly. Simon gave a hard laugh. And I recognized you, the great Commander Wilson, treated like a nobody. Outside, Carter urged a full assault. We can't wait, he insisted. We still have 7 minutes, Cruz protested. He's not coming back, Carter snapped. Inside, Robert sat across from Simon. They're preparing to storm the place, he said evenly. Then we all die, Simon replied, raising a detonator. Sensors on every entrance. Robert met his eyes. You forgot something I taught you. What's that? Always check for hidden passages. Realization flashed in Simon's face, too late. Robert moved with sudden, precise speed. In 3 seconds, the detonator was out of Simon's hand, and the threat was over. Outside, Carter led the SWAT team toward the door when their radios crackled. Abort entry. It was Cruz's urgent voice. Keep moving, Carter ordered. The team hesitated. Then another voice came through, calm and unmistakable. Black Lamb. Abort immediately. Explosives. The elite code froze the entire unit. Only top-tier operatives knew those words. Moments later, the door opened. Robert Wilson stepped out, 3 hostages behind him, unharmed. Simon Mercer followed, cuffed and silent. The man who hours earlier had been dismissed as just an old bystander now commanded the absolute respect, of the entire tactical force. As medics rushed to the hostages, Robert handed Captain Richards the detonator and a small, weathered notebook. Quiet proof of the experience no one had believed. 3 weeks of planning, enough explosives to level half a city block. But in the end, what Simon Mercer needed wasn't bullets, it was help. Lieutenant Carter stood frozen, the arrogance gone from his face, replaced by shock and shame. The man he'd dismissed as Grandpa had just done what an entire tactical team could not. As the flashing police lights painted the night, one detail stood out to everyone watching: the way the most seasoned SWAT officers now addressed Robert, not as Sir or Mr. Wilson, but as Commander, a title spoken with the reverence reserved for living legends. The revelations were only beginning. Those 5 code words that had stopped an elite team cold hinted at decades of missions no one would ever officially acknowledge. A lifetime spent protecting people who would never know his name. The great irony, the same system he had served faithfully had treated him as invisible until a crisis demanded skills no manual could teach. By morning, Robert Wilson's story dominated local headlines. Forgotten hero saves hostages. Photos showed a 72-year-old man of quiet dignity receiving an impromptu medal from the mayor. Meanwhile, videos of the officer's early disrespect spread across social media. The phrase, "Hey Grandpa," became a rallying cry against institutional bias. Lieutenant Carter was removed from active duty and placed under internal investigation for misconduct and negligence. A week later, Robert's phone rang. "Mr. Wilson," said a measured voice, "this is the National Security Director. We need to talk about your military record and about Simon Mercer." At a secure federal office, Robert faced a room of senior officials. Classified files appeared on a large screen, revealing an uncomfortable truth. Simon Mercer wasn't alone. Dozens of veterans from unacknowledged missions had been left without records, without treatment, without support. The Beirut operation never officially happened, the director admitted, and neither do you, on paper. Robert nodded. "And now you want to fix it because the public finally knows." "We need your help," the director said. "You trained these men. You know how they think. Some may be planning actions like Mercer's." Robert looked around the table, at the same system that had once discarded him, now asking for his guidance. "I'll help," he said at last, "on one condition: full reintegration and medical care for every abandoned operative, official recognition, retroactive benefits, no exceptions." The room went silent. "That will cost millions," someone whispered. "And how many lives will it cost if you don't?" Robert replied. 3 months later, the Tempest program quietly opened in an unmarked downtown building. Robert Wilson, now director of operations, personally oversaw the recovery and treatment of dozens of forgotten veterans. Simon Mercer became the program's first participant, receiving therapy instead of a prison sentence. As for Lieutenant Carter, an investigation uncovered a long pattern of misconduct. He was demoted and reassigned to a small rural station, far from the bright lights where the name Commander Wilson would forever be remembered. His dream of leading the department vanished in a single day. "How did you know?" Lieutenant Cruz asked, now a regular visitor to Robert's office. "How did you know Mercer would choose that building?" Robert's eyes warmed with a quiet smile. Observation. It was the same apartment he lived in during training 35 years ago. Patterns always tell a story if you pay attention. Cruz nodded, taking in the lesson. "The department is changing," she said. "New training protocols against bias. Your story is already a case study." "It's not enough to change procedures," Robert replied. "You have to change hearts." 6 months later, Robert received an honor he never sought. A new training hall dedicated to observation and pattern recognition now bore his name, Wilson Hall. At the ceremony, the new police chief handed him a report. Since the reforms began, use of force incidents had dropped 40%. Complaints of discrimination were cut in half. "A single voice can transform an entire system," the chief said. Your quiet example taught us more than 1,000 speeches." Robert accepted the recognition with the same calm dignity he'd shown that fateful night. No grand gestures, no boasting. Days later, while teaching recruits, Robert noticed a familiar face in the back row. Lieutenant Carter, now without rank insignia. "I requested this transfer," Carter said, his former swagger gone. "I thought it was time to learn how to truly observe." Robert studied him for a long moment. "Observation begins when you let go of certainty," he said at last. "Welcome." That evening, driving home, Robert reflected on how crisis reveals character. Some, like Carter, must stumble to learn. Others, like Cruz, simply need a steady example. On the wall of his modest apartment hung a new photograph. Robert Wilson receiving a Civilian Medal of Honor beside the 3 hostages, people who would never fully grasp how close they had come to tragedy. The real triumph wasn't the medal or belated praise. It lived in the 5 words now engraved as the motto of the Tempest program. "Respect is not a rank." Robert never had to raise his voice to be heard. His quiet strength spoke louder than sirens, proving that wisdom earned over a lifetime carries more force than any weapon, and that true respect is never demanded, only earned. If this story of justice and dignity moved you, subscribe for more real tales where quiet courage changes the world.